working on forming a subcommittee that would then produce a template of the kind of services that we want to seek bids from independent professional management firms. The ultimate purpose of this is to try to find out whether in fact we can solve some of the problems we have by that route. Some of the problems we have with management, some of the problems we have with some of the quality of services that we're receiving. There are a whole bunch of issues, and I'm going to go through those in a moment, because that's the first section of this document, laying out reasons to consider an independent professional HOA management company. However, before I say that, let me just say for the board members, and I'll reiterate this once I announce that the subcommittee's been formed and that we're starting work, which I'll do tonight or tomorrow. I'm not attempting to ramrod something through. This is a study, but it's on a fast track, because if the study proves to reveal to us what I expect it will, based on my sort of preliminary investigations and that of others that I've heard from, then I think the odds are that once you see what professional management companies have to offer, the quality of their work, the reasons we're thinking that there are good ones out there that we could trust, that you'll be inclined to think that it's worth seeking bids and finding out what sort of pricing they're offering, what sort of services they're offering, what kind of recommendations they're getting from their own boards, from the homeowners that live in those communities. And but nothing tonight, nothing even at the end of this month, is going to set in stone a process that will lead to a change in the way that we operate. This is an investigative subcommittee, which is going to bring back recommendations to the board. But the most important thing we can do is bring solid, competent, reliable information about the kinds of services that independent service companies can provide us. And in order to get good data about that, we need a template. And this is something that the professional managers that I've talked to have said. We have to decide what exactly we want. In fact, I heard back from one of the guys that I think Scott had contacted, and he's very interested, but he was a little nervous because he wasn't absolutely certain exactly what Remington Post wants from his company. And
who was that?
I don't remember his name right now, but I'll let you know, because one of the things we're going to have to do in the subcommittee is break up the work of looking at, going out and looking for companies and giving them the template. And I'll explain, there's a thing later on here in this document that explains the timetable I'm hoping to try to follow in pursuing the steps of this. But the first step is to get a clear template of what we want. And this is going to be tricky because there are differing opinions about what we want. And so I want a prototype template, which we can then present to the board, hash out with the board at this next board meeting, and settle on which of the services we want to ask them to consider and which aren't. Which model of ongoing services that this HOA provides to its homeowners do we want to follow? And I think we should be in a position to at least give a tentative answer to that, one that's strong enough that we can go ahead. It's consistent enough with a majority of the board that we can then send the subcommittee off to go seek bids on its basis. So that's the order of business, okay? So let me first, does anybody have any questions about this so far? Okay, so.
Actually, really quickly,
sure,
would you be open to, would it be too complicated for us to create like a two-option for any template that we do?
I think that we actually could. I don't think, look, these guys are professionals. The ones I've talked to, it's clear that that's not going to throw them. In fact, one of them said, look, I see two models that you might want to consider. Two different ways that you can conceive that template, and I encourage you to consider both, and I don't see any reason why we can't present both. For example, one thing is, do we want to have on-site people, at least one on-site person who comes in here, whether they work for us or they work for that company? Do we want someone who's in that office, at least during regular business hours, say 9 to 6 or 8 to 5? And that's one model. There's also another model in which you just call people in. There's nobody in the office. There are other ways to deal with that. So we could create, that's just an example of two things that we could, and we probably want to load the major things like that into each of two templates.
Right.
Okay, but I'm hoping that we're going to get a confluence of opinion about the vast majority of the services, most of which are no-brainers, plumbing, grounds, I mean, we have a lot of things that are in common. Then there are some things that there are different, I've discovered there are different ways of handling, like package service, distribution, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a courtesy.
Yeah, it's a real courtesy, but it's costing us, because, we've got somebody in the office every night till 8. So that's,
Well, that's because of the
12 hours a day,
The clubhouse is open till 8. It used to be open till 10.
Right.
And we cut back.
So making
It should
the
be open.
clubhouse available for people to come in.
Right.
There also is a way to make the clubhouse available to homeowners who want to use it, which doesn't require us to have an on-site staff every night waiting for someone to wander in and ask to use the place. But we can talk about all those details when we get to it. So let me give you, and I welcome anyone after I've marched through these 6 reasons for considering this. And this is to kind of give you a picture of what I've learned that leads me to think that we ought to take seriously the possibility that we could do better with independent professional management. Okay. So, and these are things I learned by showing a couple of managers lots of information about our operation, sharing my experience with the management we've had in the past, not just Barney, but Carol, and things I've heard about the management that preceded Carol. And asking them to give me some ideas about how that looks to them given our budget. So the first thing is that several of the services we currently provide through on-site staff. Well, sorry. So here are some points about the services we currently provide that suggest that maybe we ought to get off-site management. One is that the services we're currently providing are more expensive, according to some experts, than if we paid outside contractors and vendors to provide the service. They're provided at a lower quality of service on average over recent years, with some exceptions, than other properties that I've talked to property managers and that their HOAs seem to enjoy, who use outside contractors and vendors for the same service. I would exclude some things that we're currently getting. I think we're getting pretty good quality of plumbing service, boiler monitoring. There are some things that are being done pretty well. We might still be able to get these at a lower price. Okay. All right. Also, these services are being provided under conditions currently that make it difficult to locate a single responsible party whom we can simply require to eliminate the problems with the existing quality of service. And then there's some sub-points under that, because this is, I think, one of the things I discovered that I think was most important. The point here is that if we have these services provided by outside vendors, we can demand that they fix shortcomings, and I use Mac Gray as an example. They are a monopoly virtually in this area, and yet we get things we want from them when we push, even when they don't like. Now, we don't get everything that we ever wanted. Not every unhappy customer, every user of those machines has been satisfied. But when, for example, they swapped out the old machines with these new top loaders, and the top loaders were overflowing our drains. They tried to kick back. They came to a board meeting, tried to suggest it was our problem and were going to charge us to switch them out. We pushed back, and in the end, they switched out the ones that were producing too many gallons per second for the pipes we had, because it turned out it was not our responsibility to have pre-checked the quality of our drains. They should have done that. That was their responsibility, and their interpretation of who was at fault was not consistent with the contract we had signed with them, so they came through and did the right thing.
Yeah, the other advantage there is that you've got a signed contract which lays out explicit criteria which you can then go back and refer to.
Exactly right. You have explicit arrangements. Often with employees you have verbal agreements. And then there's also the problem of the kind of tendency to you want to have friendly relations with people that you work with. But if you manage them, then the quality of their work is ultimately on you, the manager. And professional companies that are having to operate in the market can't afford to leave us unhappy. So it puts the onus on them, and it lets the market do work, which currently we've been trying to do, and for many years, with better and worse oversight of employees, okay?
I'm gonna take a quick break. Go ahead, since
Okay.
this is recording. I forgot my power cord, and I'm afraid I'm gonna run out of juice before
Oh,
we.
okay, sure. Well, I'm just gonna follow the order of this document anyway, Jackie, so you know
Okay,
what I mean.
and I can read, so I can
Yeah.
catch it easily.
Exactly, right. But I do want to emphasize some other things about the way we do it now. Our success in demanding improvements depends on things that are hard to control with in-house staff. Quality and consistency of staff supervision, the willingness to ease and professionalism with which the board and managing agent are able to exact improvements without becoming involved in complicated labor management issues and so on, even when the services tend to be poor. This has been a problem, and I'll simply add, just to give a backdrop to why I'm saying these sorts of things about managing our in-house staff. The last major thing I spent too much time on was an in-house staff rebellion, which didn't seem to be related to the quality of the services we were getting from in-house staff, but to their feelings about how they were being treated. And this is a complication connected to being, having employees, which we would not have to deal with. If we don't like somebody that's on the grounds crew that's being sent in to do our lawns, then we tell their supervisor and they deal with it. So, I also, second point, I hear from independent property managers that they get better service from their vendors and staff than we're getting. Largely because they turn to companies with proven track records who need to satisfy their customers or lose the contracts. Third reason, one reason our on-site service workers are not performing up to par is that this site is poorly managed. No one doubts that. However, this is the case even when we had a better managing agent than we currently do. And I think that I'm less and less inclined personally to believe that if we only got a better manager than Barney, all of these problems would go away. I'm less and less inclined to think, the more I look at the things that have resulted in Barney being a target, the more I realize it's the mess that Barney foolishly waded into by becoming managing agent at the time he did. It might have been hidden from us better if Barney had been better in certain respects, but that hardly means that he's totally to blame. So, okay. Now, the second major point is we're currently using homeowner dues to pay for on-site staff, to provide services with on-site staff that are neither required by the documents that form the HOA nor best provided using on-site staff. This includes package delivery, distribution, management of homeowner problem requests, and a central office that is open and staffed 65 hours a week. That is a lot. And one of the things that the property managers I spoke to kept emphasizing was, you have someone who hires, you have two people in the office, how many hours in the day? You're paying for health insurance for both these people, plus unemployment insurance, taxes, blah, 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 blah. I mean, and then I said, so what about the people? And I asked both of them, what about the people you hire? A lot of these people, now, you may not be comfortable with this at the level, of, as one person thinking about the other persons who are working for us through these contractors. But the fact is, only a very small group of them are not themselves subcontractors who are hired on a piecework basis. They don't get benefits. They basically work for a fixed rate, and then they find insurance on their own. And that's how the market is actually dealing. The harsh reality is that's how the market is dealing with labor costs for the kind of services that we want provided for this community. And currently we are, approaching this in a way that means we're paying above market, leaving aside the inefficiencies that I was talking about and the fact that we don't have a market pressure working on our managers to make, to give us better services for less money. Then the third thing, our budget is much larger than the quality of services we are delivering. That was a uniform opinion of those who looked at the vendors we have. I described the services in detail, and then I showed them our annual budget. We have a big annual budget, and it was their view that we're not getting our money's worth. And I take that as more significant than the impression of me or the average homeowner at this HOA looking at our budget. And because those things are often driven by people's particular,